Hi, we're glad that you're able to listen in and join us in this discussion, whether you're on Facebook or YouTube. Like, comment, share, let us know that you're here. It's wonderful to be able to connect with you in that way. We've just been talking about practices or simple activities that feel restorative to us. We are in a series called Sacred Rhythms and Spiritual Desires. I opened today and just talked about how in this whole entire service of time together, we were praying that God would give us what each of us needed. Everybody comes with different needs. And I just didn't realize that even in that first song, I feel like maybe I just needed a space to cry. So I thank you for letting me do that in the middle of the first song. Because sometimes things just hit us. And part of that for me is like the comprehensive nature of our lives and these sacred rhythms and spiritual desires, and receiving that restoration that we need from God. Something that struck me that I didn't expect on Friday night. I took Collins and my mother. We went to the U.S. figure skating championship. Anybody like figure skating?
Yeah. No, but that's awesome.
Oh my goodness! I've never ever seen people perform and compete at that level. And there were multiple times throughout these routines that I was so deeply moved by the profound beauty of all of it. The way their sparkly dresses and their hair and makeup and their athleticism and their dancing and their art and the music and just the depth of what was happening, just like all at once converging. And it's just, that felt restorative to me, just to be in the presence and experience so much just beauty. It's just beauty of what humans can do and just the art of it all. So that I was like, man, maybe I should go watch figure skating more. But last week we sat with the question Jesus asked first. If you were here last week, you may remember this. If not, Jesus asked, "What do you want?" When Jesus comes to us, he doesn't ask first, "What do you believe?" Or "What have you achieved?" Or not even "What should you want?" But really, actually, what do you want? And then we realize Jesus does not shame us when we start to uncover that and get to the bottom. Because of all the things that influence human behavior, really at the center of it all is we do what we desire. And then we talked about, okay, then what that means is spiritual formation doesn't begin with fixing our beliefs or fixing our behaviors or polishing the nuances of our theology. Spiritual formation begins by honestly naming our desires in the presence of God and gently uncovering the deeper longings beneath them. And when Jesus meets us in that spot, Jesus doesn't evaluate our worth or try to tell us, how wrong we are or anything like that. Jesus, we can even bring our distorted desires into that presence. God is there to reshape them and then satisfy them. And a flourishing spiritual life grows as we order our practices and our routines around honest encounters with God. This God who is there to fashion and refashion and then meet our deepest longings, to bring us into truly who we are called to be. And then last week, if you were here, I asked you to help shape where we would go next. I gave you a survey of 8 spiritual practices, 8 of the spiritual practices, right? Like, I'm sure we could generate a much longer list historically and what people actually do. But there were 8 big ones, and I asked you to select from those 8, 3 that you wanted us to talk about in the next few weeks. And I gave you a little survey, and here's what surprised me about the results of that survey. 2 of the top 3 practices from that list that you chose seem at first glance to be contradictory, to fulfill different needs. 2 of the top ones that you chose out of the 3 were solitude and spiritual friendships. And what surprised me even more is that many of you chose both of those on the same form. So then I thought, this is odd, because usually what I imagine The kind of people that need solitude are like the frantic, overscheduled, constantly social people, right? Like that's what the need is for those people. And then the isolated people, withdrawn people, or more lonely people, they need the spiritual friendships. But this group didn't divide neatly like that at all. And that's what, to me, it raised a deeper question. Are we a people in this moment in history, in this cultural and social context, there's lots flying around, right, who need both deeper connection and deeper quiet? Are we a people who need both deeper connection and deeper quiet? And my hunch is this: even though we have moments of being alone, all of us do. We have moments of being alone, we have moments of being together in our lives. They go back and forth in a different rhythm for everybody. I wonder if the way that we approach those moments, or the way that we live those moments, if we're doing it in a way that is consistently bringing us into intentional and honest encounters with the God who meets our deepest longings, or how we're doing that, to look at that. So today we're going to begin with solitude, and we're going to look at solitude. And next week we'll turn towards spiritual friendships. But first I want to name something essential about solitude. And I don't know if solitude is something that you've practiced a lot, or spent a lot of time thinking about, or been intentional about in your spiritual life. But solitude is not isolation. Solitude is not loneliness. Solitude is not self-improvement time. The definition I came to this week, I really enjoyed this definition, so I want to kind of let it sit with you for a second. Solitude is a safe place for the soul to come out. Parker Palmer offers one of the most helpful images for this. I'm going to read it real dramatic because it's written real dramatic So listen to this description. He writes, "The soul is like a wild animal, tough, resilient, resourceful, savvy, self-sufficient. The soul knows how to survive in hard places. But it is also shy. Just like a wild animal, the soul seeks safety in the dense underbrush. If we want to see a wild animal, we know that the last thing we should do is go crashing through the woods, yelling for it to come out. But if we walk quietly into the woods, sit patiently by the base of a tree, and fade into our surroundings, the wild animal we seek might put in an appearance." Have you ever thought about solitude like that, as a safe place for your soul to come out? Solitude is that quiet clearing. It is the space where the soul dares to emerge. And a longing for solitude is not just the longing or desire to be alone. It is the longing to be in touch with what is most real within us, the very center of our being. That place that is known by God and grounded in God, and at its truest is one with God. So in our alone time, or in our practices of solitude, one problem is that we don't always make that a place to feel safe. Sometimes, our religious activity is noisy and performative and pretentious. Pretentious meaning we're pretending, right? Sometimes we ourselves are critical and demanding and judgmental. We don't want that part of ourselves to come out because we will judge it, let alone anyone else. We rush in with expectations and agendas and self-critique, and the soul in that context will stay hidden, right? There's an old story about a woman who goes into a church. You know how in the movies people just go into churches and sit there? Okay, so Catholic churches usually too, right? They're open, they're big, they're beautiful, right? There's lots of space, beauty. So a woman was sitting alone in an empty church, her head resting in her hands, and then an hour passed, and then 2, and she was still the whole time. And then the priest was concerned, so finally approached her and said, "Is there any way that I can help you?" And she looked up and she said, "No, thank you, Father. I've been getting all the help I needed until you interrupted." This woman went there intentionally to practice solitude and be in a place where her soul could come out and emerge. And in silence and in solitude, we allow God to help us in ways that, like, other people sometimes can't. Right? Now, Jesus understood this deeply. And so we're going to go to Mark chapter 6, where Jesus invites his disciples into this practice of solitude. Then we're going to just read a couple of verses. Mark chapter 6, verses 30 through 32. It says, "The apostles gathered around Jesus and reported to him all they had done and taught. Then, because so many people were coming and going that they did not even have a chance to eat." Ever been there? You're so busy. Can't even eat. Jesus said to them, "Come with me by yourselves to a quiet place and get some rest." So they went away by themselves in a boat to a solitary place. Those 3 verses is what we're going to focus on today. Jesus invites his disciples into this practice of solitude. And this invitation into solitude in Mark chapter 6 takes on even more meaning when we look at what was going on in their lives at the time. In the beginning of chapter 6, we find the disciples at a pivotal moment. Jesus had just sent them out to do their own ministry in pairs to different villages, and he gave them authority to preach, to heal, to cast out demons. They were exhilarating times of ministry, and they were successful. So they came back and they had all these stories to tell. Lives had been changed. But at the very same time, their work and ministry were so busy, they were experiencing and carrying acute and profound grief. John the Baptist, remember we talked about John the Baptist last week a little bit. He was their mentor, their rabbi, their guide before they had gone and started following Jesus. He was Jesus's mentor and rabbi and guide, and they were very, very close. John the Baptist was the one who prepared the way, the one who had baptized Jesus. He had been beheaded on a whim. King Herod had him beheaded, and it was their task, John's disciples, which Jesus and his disciples were kind of still, as they were emerging into their own group, they're still a part of that group. It was their task to get his decapitated body and prepare it for burial. Can you imagine the weight of that? That your friend that you love, that you care about, that you saw this huge injustice, that you feel powerless about because the kings get to do what they want. This person who had so much life, so much vitality, so much humility, had given so much and led people toward Christ, baptizing, inviting people into the kingdom of God, preparing Jesus for his ministry, giving up his few disciples, a few of his disciples, sending Jesus off. This guy had just been killed by this king, and their job was to the very real and physical task of getting his body and preparing it for burial. So it's hard to imagine the emotional weight of that moment, holding the lifeless, violated body of the one who proclaimed God's kingdom with such power and grace. And so that was happening, and this ministry thing was happening, and when they return, there's a crowd that's crowding around Jesus. And his disciples are trying to all get a word in. "You won't believe it," they might have said, right? Like, "We told the demon to leave that guy and it left him. Jesus, listen to what happened. We invited people to repent and they came forward confessing and repenting. We're continuing to do what you and what John the Baptist have taught us to do, and God is blessing it, and God is healing, and God is saving, and God is doing things." There's this guy, he couldn't walk, but now he can, and all this is happening. And Jesus listens, but he doesn't linger in these reports. He sees something deeper at stake. Mark tells us because so many people were coming and going, they didn't even have a chance to eat. Jesus said to them, come with me by yourselves to a quiet place. And let's get some rest. Jesus knows that without intentional solitude, even meaningful ministry becomes unsustainable. He invites them not to do more, but to be with him. And if we read on in the same chapter, even then the crowd follows them. The solitary place is no longer solitary. They get in the boat to go somewhere else, and the crowd beats them there on foot because they hear that they're coming. They want to be healed. They want to be ministered to. And then you're like, well, what does Jesus do then? Does he say, no, go away, we need solitude? It says that he had compassion on this crowd. He feeds 5,000. But then the very next thing Jesus does, as we keep reading, before the miracle is even cleaned up, Jesus sends the disciples ahead again to a quiet place. That is what they need the most. So they put their solitude on pause. They didn't just skip it and say whatever. Do your lives ever feel like this? Because I know that mine does. You try to carve out time for solitude and for quiet and for rest in God, for soul replenishing Sabbath or silence, only for that time to get co-opted by a new set of needs and demands coming from somewhere else, by someone else. Part of the beauty of this story is that Jesus does not give up on this ambition to make time for solitude. Me personally, I have neglected Sabbath over the past several weeks. The Christmas season was so busy. So there's been several weeks I'm like, whatever, can wait. I'm good. But I don't know. You saw me go over. It catches up with you. I think it really is important. And Jesus is remarkably single-minded about this. Rest in God is not a reward for faithfulness. If you work hard enough, I'll give you some rest. No, rest in God is the soil that makes faithfulness possible. It's something we do because that comes first. We know we need to just sit and be with God in the safety of a place where our soul can emerge in its truest form. And here's where this meets us squarely in our own lives too, because friends, we live in a culture that actively resists solitude. That tells me somebody somewhere benefits off of us being frantic and overscheduled and out of our minds, right? But we live in a culture that always wants us to be plugged in, always accessible, always overstimulated. Our notifications, our messages, our news content. There is no natural silence anymore. People tell me of days gone by where there was such a thing as a natural silence. They'd go out and sit on their porch after a long day. There was places like that there was just this natural rhythm of activity and silence. Right now, in our culture, there is no natural silence anymore, ever, anywhere. And that capital system, you add to that, it trains us to be human doings instead of human beings, that we start to find our worth and our productivity and what we can do for others, or our accumulation or our achievement. And then the result is exhaustion. It's exhaustion, and it's more than our systems, our bodies, our minds can handle, right? Not just physical, but spiritual too. Is it true that we are too available to everyone and not attentive enough to God? So, how do we practice solitude in an intentional and soul-satisfying way? All that means, it could be really depressing and discouraging, but really what all that means is it's up to us to be intentional, to carve out these times and make it a priority. Because the truth that I think I'm starting to discover is that effective solitude only happens when we don't give up on it and when we give it our full attention. It's not just going to happen. Maybe it will for you. That would be great. It doesn't do that for me. I have to be intentional about it. And in order to practice effective solitude, it doesn't mean always hours alone in a monastery. I have done that before, and it is really amazing and extremely replenishing. Even if you're there, though, and you're not being intentional about it, you can miss the benefits. But that's not the only thing that it has to be. Intentional solitude, and I know that this might sound trite and cliche, but friends, it's so, so true. It can actually begin with small, faithful windows. Maybe a few minutes of silence before you reach for your phone in the morning. That's different for a lot of people. What could the impact of that be? Maybe it's a pause in the car before going inside. Wherever you're transitioning from home to work, from work to home, from grocery store, chores to home, from wherever you're leaving or coming or going. In your going and in your coming, to sit in your car and give that intentional solitude, that mindful meditation with God, even just for a couple of minutes. A walk without earbuds. What would that be? To look up at the beauty of the sky. The heavens declare the glory of God. The skies are proclaiming God's wonders. And to enter into that space of intentional solitude. A breath prayer between meetings. Anybody hyper-scheduled at work? Like your work is like go, 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 always on time? I just heard a notification. I'm hearing notifications as we go. It's like the phone answered. I'm overstressed. the cell phone. I'm always having to notify everybody. What if you took a little break and said a prayer between meetings? Breathing and doing that solitude. Any place that you can carve out, any space that you can carve out, and simply say, God, I am here. I am listening. Solitude, again, is different than the state of being alone in a room. It's attentive. It's intentional, sitting with God and our true selves. And over time, as we offer God these quiet clearings, we begin to discover what Jesus knew all along. The soul needs those chances to emerge from the underbrush, the wild animal of the soul. It needs to be met in that clearing by that God who can satisfy its deepest desires and longings and be helped. The soul needs help from God. Deep and gentle and authentic help from God. So, because this can be so different, just a quick show of hands. Has anybody ever, on a scale of 1 to 5, if 1 being, Amy, I have literally no idea how I would do this by myself. If I'm going to go just say, okay, I'm practicing solitude right now, start, I would have no idea what I'm doing. To 5, I am the spiritual solitude, spiritual practice guru that soaks this in constantly. I do this all the time. And just show of hands if you want to. I just want to kind of see, where you think that you might be as we talk about practically how to practice this. Okay, thank you, that is helpful. It's been a long, long journey for me, years, as a matter of fact, because my lifestyle as a child and teenager and young adult was always frantic, always on the go, and I never slowed down for anything. And so over the last several years of my life, solitude and Sabbath and rest in God's presence and cultivating that, it has been a learning curve for me. And so I'll just share with you some practical things before we bring the kids and teens back. Some practical things that help me. But as I've also been studying Christian mindfulness and meditation, and trying to incorporate that. For me, what solitude is really practicing that mindfulness and meditation in a quiet, comfortable, safe space, just me and God. That's what it is for me. But take it or leave it. This is what helps me. To get in a comfortable and safe place. To get in a comfortable position, because part of this is very bodily, right? To just allow your body to breathe, to rest, to relax, and to be unguarded. Like nobody's running after you. You're not having to be in fight or flight in this space. You know, you're not having to answer somebody's questions, or you know, the deadlines and demands and pressures can fade. So to allow your body, your nervous system to relax, to fade, and deeply breathe. I am not a scientist. I don't know why, but it does. It's just deep breathing calms your nervous system. It's also theological because, you know, our faith tradition tells us that the Spirit of God, when they first imagined what the Spirit of God was, it was the breath in their lungs. That was the Spirit of God. Every time they breathed in, they're breathing in the presence of God, because God's the only one who gave them air or lungs at all. And when they breathe out, it's that rhythm of constantly breathing God in and needing more of God. So if that helps you, breathing is important. And then just to become aware of God's presence. It's just a simple, like, God, you're here with me. God, I know you're here. Like, right? Like, we're here in this together. I'm with you, God. I mean, it's very childlike for me. But it's just like, yeah, God, here we are. Here I am. Here you are. We're here together. You know. So becoming aware of God's presence. And as you're breathing, and as you're safe, and as you're comfortable, and as you're starting to relax, and becoming aware of God's presence with you, to kind of check in with your own soul. Like, what is it you want to say to God? When all of that is stripped away, when there aren't like deadlines hanging over your head right in that moment, what's your true self? What's your soul want to say to God? What do you need from God? Do you have a joy that you haven't expressed? Do you have tears that haven't leaked out that need to? Do you have any questions that are bugging you? You know, anything. There's not a wrong time, a wrong way to do solitude. And as this is coming out and like, you know, you're just sitting in this experience with God, there's no need to fix that. If it's negative, it's negative, right? And things just are what they are. But just the goal is just to be prayerfully attentive to God's presence with you and to be present with God, just for a minute or two. That whole thing that I just described, it might seem very simplistic. It might seem very uneducated. It might seem very childlike. But that's all it is, and wow, what a world of difference it makes to carve out time for that. Just to sit and be with God. And so I wanted to offer that practical stuff just at the very end, so that as you're in 2026, maybe wanting to include more solitude, intentional, and not give up solitude in your life, because there are times that this begins and then somebody pounds on the door and says, I need this, I need you, you know, and just like Jesus with that crowd that wanted food, you have to make a decision. Do I send them away, or do I postpone this solitude? My suggestion is, if you do meet the need of the other person, that you don't forget about your own need, that you come back to it, that you carve out time, you know, don't forget about that. I feel like that's what, you know, we read in the story, that's what Jesus did, and how important that is. So I'm going to invite us to pray, and then I'm going to play and sing an old hymn. It's called It Is Well With My Soul. You don't have to sing if you don't want to. And I just want to give you an opportunity to sit for a minute or two of this song and kind of do this. And so if you want to leave, instead of the lyrics of a song, you just want to leave that slide up of those bullet points of, you know, practicing solitude. Feel free to do that. And those of you who are with us online, we hope that you have a moment to do this as well, even if it's not here with us in this gathering.